Maybe I was a little early last week in the video proclaiming how great Peter was. See, last time, to catch you up, Peter correctly identifies Jesus as the Messiah, and Jesus says, "Peter, you are the rock upon which I will build my church." And this week, Peter goofs it all up. He makes a big mistake, and it doesn't turn out well for him. I don't know if you guys have been there, but I certainly have. Riding high and mighty, you think nothing can bring you down. I'm nailing it. Number one song after number one song, you know what I mean? And you just totally mess up, right? So in this story, right, it says that immediately after last week, Jesus starts telling the disciples that as the Messiah, the Son of Man, what he's going to do is he's going to suffer and he's going to die. And then 3 days later, he will be brought back again. Right? And Peter, he's like, I can't miss. Let me correct Jesus here. Let me tell him the error of his ways. And he doesn't even do it in front of everybody. He kind of pulls Jesus aside. He's like, hey, Jesus, buddy, maybe cool it on that whole death and dying thing. Surely that's not correct, right? The Messiah can't die. That would defeat the whole purpose, right? And to a certain extent, you can kind of understand where Peter is coming from, right? If this was a political revolution, right? If Jesus was supposed to take over, set things in from top to bottom, restructure everything, he'd need to be alive for that. If you take out the leader of that movement, probably the movement is going to die, right? Not going to work out. You got to start over. Sorry, go home. But Jesus tells Peter to get behind him, Satan, right? Peter just apparently really misunderstood what Jesus was trying to say. If Jesus is comparing him to Satan, right, of all people. So what does Peter get wrong here? Right? I think one thing, right, is he seems to be really upset with this whole idea of Jesus dying, right? Like we said, that he thought Jesus was going to come in and be the new Caesar. Jesus is not doing that. He seems to be doing something totally different than that. I think one way we can try and figure out what exactly Jesus was doing here and why Peter messed up so much is at the end of this story, right? Jesus tells the disciples that some of them won't die before they see the kingdom of heaven. That's kind of confusing to a lot of our understandings of what the kingdom of heaven is, right? Like, we might think it's a place we go after we die, where everything is perfect and everyone's got these angel wings and halos. Or maybe we think it's the end times, right? Revelation, the apocalypse is here. There's all this, stuff going on, and then afterwards, Jesus comes in and brings the kingdom of heaven here on earth. But no, Jesus tells the disciples, some of them will experience the kingdom of heaven. His whole ministry is centered on this idea. Like, half of the parables begin with Jesus saying, the kingdom of heaven is like, or the kingdom of heaven could be compared to. And it's still kind of confusing what he means all the time when he's saying the kingdom of heaven. So, what are we to do with this? What are we supposed to do? Well, I think one thing we can look at is we can look at the lives of the apostles, right? These people that follow Jesus, and he says they'll experience the kingdom of heaven, some of them before they die. So what do they do after Jesus ascends back into heaven after dying and then coming back 3 days later? Well, they start the church, right? And this church was a little bit different than I think a lot of the society today understands church to be, right? It was this community of people that all came together, and they would eat meals together, and they shared everything that they had, to the point that nobody had any material needs that were unmet. Nobody went to bed hungry. And I think that's a huge idea, right? I think that could be a glimpse of what the kingdom of heaven here on earth was like. Right? We pray every day, every time we pray the Lord's Prayer, that God's kingdom come and will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The kingdom of heaven is something that we can seemingly experience here on earth, and it's something we want to experience here on earth. So if we are to say that this early church, that this living like they do in heaven but here on earth, is what Jesus was talking about when he said the disciples would experience the kingdom of heaven before they died, that raises some interesting implications for how we're to live our lives here on earth. What are some of the things that we could do to maybe experience that kingdom of heaven here on earth? That the way things are in heaven is like they are for you and me in our normal everyday lives. Are there things that we can do to help make sure that people's needs are met, that they don't go hungry, that we live in community together, where we know our neighbors and we eat together and take care of each other and live life in a way that Jesus would have lived his life? how do we bring the kingdom of heaven here on earth and experience it for ourselves the way that these disciples were said to by Jesus?